Hello, welcome to those of you who are here with me live and those of you who will be watching later. We are going into the learning chapter 6 of your Open Stacks Psychology textbook. Let's check it out. So first of all, what is learning? Learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior that results from practice or experience. We have learned something, okay? Also, we have some terms to know. Reflexes. This is motor or neural reactions to specific stimuli in the environment. And then we have instincts, which is more innate behaviors that are triggered by a broader range of more complex pattern behaviors involving movement of the organism as a whole and involve higher brain functioning. So, for example, an instinct, you may be instinctive to pull your hand away from something that's hot, okay? It's instinctive for birds to fly south for the winter because they don't want to be cold. So let's look at some of the types of learning. One type of learning is associative learning. This occurs when an organism makes connections between stimuli or events that occur together in an environment. Classical conditioning is organisms learn to associate events or stimuli that repeatedly happen together, okay? So when things are happening together, we learn to associate those events. Operant conditioning, organisms learn to associate events as well, a behavior and its consequences, reinforcement or punishment. So if we look at that, it's like, well, what's the difference here? Well, classical conditioning is reflexive training. All right, now I'm writing with a mouse, so please forgive me. But it's reflexive. We are training a reflex, such as fear, withdrawal, nausea, 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 things that are reflexive. You don't have to, or blinking, eye blinking. And again, I'm writing with a mouse, which actually is pretty impressive. All right, eye blinking. These are things that are reflexive. You don't have to know how to do them. You just kind of automatically do them. They're automatic. It's reflexive. Whereas operant conditioning, this is voluntary. All right, you are voluntarily doing this behavior based on, or not doing the behavior, based on a reinforcement or a punishment. So, for example, if you take out the trash and you get $1, ooh, I like getting $1. Dollars are good. Dollars add up. So I'm going to take out the trash a whole lot because I get $1. Punishment. If you smack your sister and you lose your screens for 3 days, that kind of stinks. I think I'm going to make the choice not to smack my sister. I'm going to decrease that behavior. We're going to talk about more of these in great detail later. Today we'll be looking at classical conditioning. And then next class meeting we'll be doing operant conditioning and observable learning. And observational learning. So if we have time today, we might hit observational learning, but we are definitely going to do classical conditioning today. So classical conditioning, what makes it classical? Well, classical conditioning is a term coined by Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov was actually studying the stomach, how the stomach works with dogs, okay? Hey, yes, absolutely. Somebody just asked if we were going to cover dog training. Sort of. We're going to talk about operant conditioning, and that's what we mostly use when we're training animals. So we will get there, but it's going to be next lecture. All right, so Ivan Pavlov. So Ivan Pavlov was a researcher who was a scientist studying salivation in digestion, okay? He discovered that when he would come into the lab, the dogs would start salivating. And it was like, why are they salivating? There's no meat powder. Well, he discovered there was an association between the meat powder and him and the door opening, and that's why they'd start salivating. So he started studying this phenomenon, and he coined the term classical conditioning, the form of learning in which a neutral stimulus evokes a response. So a neutral stimulus, so something that normally wouldn't cause something, will cause or bring forth, make happen, a response. So for example, blinking your eye, okay, an eye blink, okay, a puff of air A puff of air. Puff of air is going to make your eye blink, okay? You're going to blink. Puff of air is going to make me blink. But, you know it's not going to make me blink? Saying hello is not going to make me blink. But if someone goes, hello, blink, and then you're going to blink. Hello, they blow in your eyes, you're going to blink, okay? Eventually they can go, hello, and you're going to blink, okay? That puff of air is going to make you blink. We know that causes it. But hello shouldn't. So hello is your neutral stimulus causing you to blink, okay? We're going to talk more about that. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to draw you some outlines for that. Reflexes are invoked by certain stimuli. A reflex is an unlearned response, and a stimuli is the environmental condition that evokes that response, okay? So air in face evokes blinking. Reflexes can be learned through conditioning through association, okay? All right, so here's how this works. You have these terms here. You have your unconditioned stimulus, which elicits a response from an organism prior to conditioning. So let's say unconditioned stimulus will be, let's go with loud noise. Okay, a loud noise. It's going to make you jump. Okay, it's going to make you startle. Or startle. We could put startle. It's going to make you startle. Start. All right, neutral stimulus. Okay, maybe a puppy. Okay, we got a puppy. So if I give you a puppy and then make a big, loud, scary noise, it's going to make you jump. Okay, so I give you that puppy. Loud, scary noise, going to make you jump. Now, hey, guess what? When I give you that puppy, all of a sudden you jump or you startle, okay? You've been conditioned to be afraid, to feel fear, and to respond with a startle response to that cute little puppy, okay? So we can think of like hundreds of examples. Like, what do you think? Let me see. What do you think? Give me an example. Taste aversion is an example of classical conditioning. We're going to talk more about taste aversion. So I was trying to stay away from taste aversion for this first one. But think of some other things. So the unconditioned stimulus, think of this. The unconditioned stimulus elicits a response. It brings forth a response, okay? So unconditioned response is what happens when you have an unconditioned stimulus. These two are paired. Conditioned stimulus, which is your neutral stimulus, when it's paired with the unconditioned stimulus, okay, causes that to happen. Then it causes the unconditioned response. Then when you remove the unconditioned stimulus, when you remove this right here, when this is taken away, you have just left the conditioned stimulus, which now it's a conditioned response. So in Pavlov's study, let's use his study, meat powder made the dog salivate. Okay? Meat powder made the dog salivate. He paired it with a bell. So he'd ring a bell, the meat would be present, dog would salivate. Ring a bell, give the meat, dog would salivate. So now he'd ring the bell, and the dog would salivate. Okay? So this is classical conditioning. Now, if you see a test question that says, in Pavlov's famous study, when the bell was rung and the dog salivated, the salivation was the conditioned response. Okay, that's the answer. But if it says, in Pavlov's famous study, when the meat powder was paired with the bell, the unconditioned salivation would be the unconditioned response, okay? Whenever this is around, this isn't what's causing it yet, okay? This is what's making it happen. So the meat causes salivation. All right, so and here's a kind of a breakdown of Pavlov's study. All right, so with classical conditioning, you have acquisition. This is the initial period of learning where the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus. So it takes a while of pairing this together and to get the conditioned stimulus to cause the conditioned response. So another great one is if I say hello, and then I flip off the lights. Okay, I turn off the lights, lights out. Your pupils will constrict, or excuse me, will dilate. All right, your pupils will dilate. Eventually, me coming in the room and saying hello, your pupils will dilate. Even if I don't turn off the lights, they'll start to dilate, and your body will be like, whoa, 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 why am I dilating? Pull back, stop. Okay? Because your body gets trained that when somebody says hello, your eyes dilate. All right? Okay. So, in Pavlov study, okay, looking into it more, extinction. Extinction is when the conditioned stimulus no longer causes a conditioned response. So, in Pavlov study, if we look here, the bell will eventually stop working. Okay, when it stops working, that is extinction. Okay, that's what extinction is. When eventually the bell will stop working. It just won't work anymore. Okay, because the association starts to get too weak, and it just isn't there anymore. But after time, spontaneous recovery can happen, which means time has passed. It's already extinguished. Extinction has happened. But then time passes and the conditioned stimulus again elicits a conditioned response. It may be because the smell was there again, or maybe the unconditioned stimulus was there again, paired with the conditioned stimulus just the once. And so the behavior conditioned response came back for a while. But it doesn't last as long. So if you have spontaneous recovery comes back, let's say the dog starts salivating again at the sound of the bell, it won't last as long as the initial conditioning. Extinction will happen faster. All right, stimulus generalization. This is where the conditioned response is evoked or brought forth by a stimuli similar to the stimulus. So you have a bell, okay, a ding, ding, ding bell. Well, now you have a doorbell, okay? And maybe a doorbell. Oh, writing with a mouse. A doorbell. Okay. I have to Doorbell. All right. Doorbell. Jeez Louise. That looks like Dooftell. All right. Doorbell. So these two things are different, but we've made a generalization that anything that sounds remotely like a bell is going to make that dog salivate. However, stimulus discrimination is when only that bell is going to make him salivate, or only that thing that has been used as the conditioned stimulus is going to make the conditioned response happen. And again, this can be applied in so many situations. Habituation is when the organism learns not to respond to a stimuli that is present repeatedly without change. So when you first walk in a room and there's like a buzz sound, of a humming and a buzz sound, you get habituated to that. You start to ignore it, you get used to it, and you no longer respond to it. Okay? That's habituation. Higher order conditioning, this is when you pair the once neutral stimulus with a new neutral stimulus. Okay? So the conditioned stimulus is now paired again. So in Pavlov study, for example, you have the bell, right? So the bell caused the conditioned response, right? Oops, hold on. I'm going to put the bell up here because it goes up here. So the bell caused, initially, the bell was causing that unconditioned response. Well, now we're going to pair the bell with a light switch. Okay, now that light, and that causes salivation. So now we're going to pair that light with that bell. So now the light will cause the dog to salivate. Okay? Questions? Feeling pretty good about that? All right. I'm going to erase some of this. Actually, you know what? I'll just go back to this one because this is more space. Okay, so let me give you another example. A great classical conditioning example. Or somebody want to give me an example? Okay. All right, so... Okay, bite. A lot of times people do fear. Okay, getting bit. Oh, yeah, that's a good... Yeah, we could do... That's... Okay, sure. Hold on. They want to change it. So we're going to do... That's a good one. Let's see. A lot of the times people use fear, because fear. But we're going to go with... This is a really great one. Okay, chemotherapy makes you nauseous. All right, it makes you nauseous. So, the neutral stimulus is the hospital. And a friend goes to the hospital. Now, even if they're not getting chemotherapy and they feel nausea. They feel nausea. That's a perfect example. The chemotherapy is what's unconditioned stimulus causing the nausea, but they every time they go to the hospital, right? It's where they got their chemo for a year. So now whenever they go to the hospital, they start to feel nauseous. And that starts to go away after a while. The association starts to dwindle. So remember we talked about here, we talked about extinction. So eventually after a long period of time, you now go to the hospital, you don't have that connection anymore to the chemo. The connection kind of gets broken. And so you don't have that same conditioned response. So yeah. All right. So taste aversion. So yeah. So you guys had asked about taste aversion. Absolutely. With regards to taste aversion, taste aversion is perhaps one of the easiest understandable, easiest to understand types of classical conditioning. So when we think of taste aversion, we think of what makes you sick. Let's say flu. Okay, the flu makes you sick. Nausea. Or sickness. Or botulism or a virus or some kind of toxin makes you sick. Well, let's say that you went out to, I think McDonald's is safe. McDonald's. We went out to McDonald's, all right, and you had yourself a cheeseburger and some fries, and then you got real sick, and now whenever you see McDonald's, you feel sick. Okay? It may have not had anything to do with McDonald's. It may have been that you had the flu. A great example is my daughter and her friend. I took them out to a restaurant, and we ate, and we came home that night, and they were playing, and about midnight, they both woke up very, very sick, both with fevers. And we had already been together for about 4 days. So we had come back from Greenville Museum about 4 days prior. They had caught some kind of flu virus. And so so I took the kids to the doctor, and they said, yes, they both had tested positive for flu. My friend said, please keep my daughter there. I have 4 other children. So I was like, okay. So here I'm nursing these 2 kids. Well, they absolutely were adamant. They were like, we are not going back to that place. Like, absolutely not. Like, we're just not going back there. And I kept telling them, this is not what made you sick. You guys had flu. Oh, not going back. Never going back. Neither one. We've probably been to that place like once, and my daughter was still very uncomfortable about eating there. So we haven't been back. And it had nothing to do with their food and everything just to do with the fact they were actually just sick. But they made that association. So they were done. All right. So behaviorism, John Watson is considered the founder of behaviorism. He did a whole lot more studies on this classical conditioning and fear. What he would do is he'd take a cute little rat and he would pair it with a loud, terrible clanging sound. And when that loud, terrible clanging sound was made, little Albert would get very, very scared. And so he would, he'd startle and he'd be very scared and he'd run away and try to get away from this rat. even though the rat wasn't causing the problem, after a while, Albert would not get anywhere near the rat. So if we go back to our thing, if we go back to our chart here, we can see how that works. Okay? So we can totally see this. All right, so we can totally see this, how this works. So you make a loud sound, causes fear, pair it with a rat. So now the loud sound causes fear. Right? And this is not okay. Like, this is considered very unethical. So this is a no-no. Do not classically condition people to be afraid of things and cause fear. It is ethically not okay.